so, yeah. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Did they give you a reason? Huh? Huh? I don't think this objection, it might be outside of that now, isn't it? That's a different argument. Sure. I think change the word to you know, I was different to that. Huh? Okay. We'll change the name. Oh wow, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
That is very generous.
Okay, good evening everyone. Can I welcome you all this evening? I'll go for some housekeeping first before we commence. Thank you. Some housekeeping. There are agendas circulated, so if you can grab one, they're left on the seats. If not, can you share with someone, please? Thank you. If you've got your mobile phones, can you please switch them off or put them on silent? Also, if you've come for a particular item, you can stay for the duration of the meeting or leave at your leisure, providing you do so quietly. There's no direct dialogue between members of the gallery and councillors. There are opportunities for people to speak. Those are requested to present during their items. And of course, we'd appreciate their silence during discussion during the course of tonight's meeting. If you do want to chat, can you please go outside as the room echoes. This is actually being recorded and transmitted, tonight's meeting. Thank you, welcome once again. We'll now commence tonight's meeting with the agenda as listed. Membership is there. We have apologies tonight from two councillors. Councillor Villella is on leave of absence and Councillor Lawrence is an apology. Next item we're considering is item 3, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest from councillors? There are none. Thank you. Can you just be silent, sir? Thank you. I'm trying to explain, and if you listen, you'll probably hear. Okay? Thank you. Item 4, confirmation of minutes of the previous council meetings. We have someone move those, please. Move Councillor McCarthy, second Councillor Williams. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. We'll now go to item 5, consideration of reports, what you people have come here to listen to. The first one being 5.1, 33 Joffrey Street Reservoir. Officers will make a presentation. We'll then have speakers who are nominated to speak to present their cases as well. Then we'll have questions from councillors to officers before we decide to proceed with a recommendation or an alternative. So over to the officers, 5.1, 33 Joffrey Street. Darren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This application seeks approval to construct 8 double-storey residential dwellings. 6 of the dwellings are 2 bedrooms, 2 are 3 bedrooms. There are a total of 12 car parking spaces provided or proposed on the plans. The application seeks a waiver of a single visitor car parking space. Open space for the dwellings is provided in a conventional ground floor format. The subject land is large, it's equivalent to 2 house blocks, it's 1,520 square metres. The property is included in the general residential zone 2. Councillors, Mr Mayor, you'll probably be aware that this is one of the sites that there's been 2 attempts to include it in the neighbourhood residential zone. One of the items in the report there takes you through the fact that this area sits within a Newton change area within Darrington Housing Strategy. We had one of these matters last meeting, Mr Mayor, where the zone suggests something different to what the preferred housing strategy is. And that's why in this particular case there's been a closer look at the neighbourhood character attributes and the preferred future character. And I think there's a good explanation of where that sits within the officer's report. Following this application being advertised, 45 objections have been received. These are detailed and there's a response to each of them on pages 6 to 9. The officer's report has assessed the application as not meeting the intent or conforming with the preferred neighbourhood character for Joffrey Street. For these reasons, as set out in the report, the application is recommended for refusal.
Thank you very much, Darren. We have speakers for this item.
Yes, Mr Mayor, we have the applicant, on behalf of the applicant, Mr Chris McKenzie, and an objector.
Okay, thank you. Chris, if you're here, you hear something? Thank you, Chris. You can take the seat in the front there. You've got 5 minutes to present. Keep your eye on the screen so you can time yourself. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we're both familiar with all familiar with the process that I regularly come here and talk to you in situations where an application comes before you with a recommendation for support or approval, but through the number of objections it comes up here for your independent consideration. It's relatively rare that we get to a point where when the agenda is released a day or so before this meeting, a working day, we have a situation where the actual recommendation coming up here is a refusal. It's far more common if it's going to be refused, that's telegraphed and it's just refused rather than sending it up here. It's an interesting situation where you have a 1,500 square metre lot where the zone clearly allows for a development of this nature, but as Mr. Rudd explained, there's been a rolling process over a couple of years now where council has indicated that they think the planning scheme should say something different to what it actually says, which is that this is a general residential zone where developments that properly comply with Res Code, that provide ground floor open space, as all of these do, that comply with siting requirements in terms of the length of walls on boundaries, the setbacks off boundaries and the like, can fairly and reasonably be assessed for approval. It's been fairly clearly telegraphed that the reason why this has come up with a recommendation for refusal is the perception that council's preference through its housing policy is that this should have a different zone, which puts you in a difficult position because you're actually supposed to assess the planning scheme as it is, not as what it might have been had the Minister made a different decision when they formulated the planning scheme. What I'd say to you is this is a fairly conventional layout for townhouses. It's providing a suitable front setback, it's providing suitable siting. All of the first floors are detached. You don't have a situation where they're attached, they're well set in. In many instances it's 3 to 4 metres off the side boundaries. The elements for Unit 5, where it's less than that, are opposite a very large shed on the boundary. So it's not actually a project that is pushing as hard as many that come up here. There's no reverse living, for example. It's something that could have found its way through to having officer support, but I think there's been a significant influence from the background work, as I discussed. But in any event, I'll leave it to you. You'll make your own decision, I'm sure you will. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If you can resume your seat in the gallery. We now have an objector here who's requested to speak. Nicole, are you here? Thank you, Nicole. If you could take a seat there at the front. Got 5 minutes to present. You can take the whole 5 minutes. Just keep your eye on the timepiece here. Thank you.
Hello. I'm a resident in Joffre Street, and there's lots of reasons to object to this application, but 2 main points that I would like to emphasise. One of them is that the application refers to the house as a tired house, but in actual fact it's an impressive double-storey period home that's well restored and maintained, and I think it contributes very well to the historical and character of Oak Hill Estate, and it's one of the reasons that we'd moved there. If this house was to be demolished, I understand that it's not heritage listed, so that wouldn't preclude it from being demolished, but if it is demolished and 8 double-storey townhouses proceed, it will set an unprecedented, it'll set a precedence for unbridled development in the area, in the local area, and I think in turn potentially decimate the character that Oak Hill Estate is renowned, but also, as I said, one of the main reasons that we moved there. The second point, and perhaps the most important point that I want to emphasise, is the impact this level of medium density development will have on our local street. Council will be well aware of the issues that we have with the congestion in the street. Joffre Street accommodates a church, a swimming pool and the primary school around the corner. We've recently had some improvements like the painting of the car park spaces, which has helped to a degree, but there's been some community consultation with the church to try and address our ongoing traffic congestion issues in the street, and it includes hiring some private security guards to facilitate traffic progress through the street. The southern end, particularly on church nights, it can be gridlocked, and there's some fancy manoeuvring and parallel parking to try and accommodate the movement of cars in and out of the street. If this level of development occurs, it will contribute further to the traffic congestion that's in our street. I think at times it's a safety risk. I've got young children. We've got a high volume of pedestrians that are children making their way to school and the church or the swim school. And with the density of traffic that there is, a lot of cars have been nudged and hit, and it's just a matter of time before someone in turn is knocked. I hope not, but this kind of development, I understand in terms of the parking restrictions, and we've got public transport close, but the fact is that people park their cars on the streets. And if this proceeds, it will absolutely gridlock our street. I implore you as council to reject this application in its entirety, to protect and preserve the historical character of Oak Hill Estate and for greater city of Darebin, but importantly to protect my right as a resident to a safe environment and to be able to enjoy the amenities that if this proceeds, it will gridlock our street. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Nicole. You can resume your seat in the gallery. We now have questions from councillors, or we have a recommendation as listed. Councillor McCarthy.
Look, no questions. Happy to move the recommendation if there's no...
Move Councillor McCarthy. Seconded Councillor Williams. Councillor McCarthy, do you wish to speak to it?
I think it's very straightforward. The officers have made a clear case for why we should refuse it. I would just want to point out one thing, which is that as a matter of practice, any application that has gone to advertising is required to come back to the planning committee if it's received the sufficient number of objections, which is why we're actually having to make a decision of refusal rather than it being done under delegation. So I just wanted to clarify that because the applicant's representative had suggested otherwise, and that's not the case. So, and I'd be happy to correct it if I'm wrong, but I think it's important to know why it's come back here.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Williams, anything to add?
I'd like to add in that there's no visitor car parking that's been provided, considering there's 8 units and the limitation on Joffrey Street at this point in time.
All right, thank you. Okay, if there's no further comment, I'll put that to a vote to refuse the application. All those in favour? That's carried. Members of the gallery, councillors refuse that application. All parties be notified of council's decision. The applicant will be given council's decision and they can challenge that should they decide to go to VCAT. They'll be given 60 days should they decide to challenge council's decision. All the objectors will be notified that council has refused that application. If we do go to VCAT, we'll argue the case that we have not supported it as a refusal. So thank you for those who have come to that item. You may leave if you like or stay for the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Next item we're considering is 5.2, 2 to 4 Kelsby Street in Reservoir. And we'll just wait for those who have come to that item to leave.
Why your application rejected? No, I will to tell you.
Thank you.
It's all good for you.
Thank you.
That is stupid.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Next item we're considering is 5.2, 2 to 4 Kelsby Street in Reservoir. Thank you. Come on, sir. Okay, please escort him out.
I have to deal with him all the time.
Apologies for that, members of the gallery. 5.2, we're now considering 2 to 4 Kelsby Street Reservoir. Over to the officers.
Thank you, councillors. This is an application for a medium density development for 8 double-storey dwellings. Units 1 to 5 have living areas at the ground floor with 3 bedrooms on the first floor. Each dwelling is provided with a single garage and tandem car space. Units 6 to 8 have living areas at the ground level and 2 bedrooms and a study at the first floor. They are 2-bedroom dwellings, and they are provided with a one space for each dwelling. Unit 1 has vehicular access, its own vehicular access to Kelsby Street, whilst all the other dwellings share a common drive that extends from Kelsby Street. Open space is provided at ground level, and several of the dwellings have a combination of open space at ground level and balcony space. The dwellings are contemporary in design. The majority of them have flat roofs. Units 1 and 6, which face the street, have a section of roof which is a gabled roof, as well as a flat roof alongside. Councillors, this application is advertised in the normal fashion, attracting 21 objections from the community. The objections are detailed at page 30 of the agenda. And a detailed assessment against the objections
have also been provided in the agenda. Councillors, the proposal achieves a high degree of compliance with risk code. The only area of non-compliance relates to the front setback. Based on the setback of the adjoining dwellings, a setback of 6 metres should be provided. It is proposed to provide a setback of 4.5 and 7 metres. We believe the setback is justified in that the development steps into the larger setback. We achieve good visuals of the neighbouring dwellings, and therefore we believe the neighbouring dwellings are not impacted by the altered setback. Councillors, we have a detailed condition 1 which deals with seeking clarification as to the measures of open space noted on the plans. We believe, as a result of our own calculation, that the open space provision can be achieved. It may warrant in the reduction of some of the floor spaces of the dwellings to do so, but a minor variation there. We've also sought conditions to deal with treatment to windows to prevent overlooking. We've also sought conditions to deal with the setbacks of the stairwells for the dwellings on the southern side of the block to ensure that they achieve compliance with the standard 455 of the scheme. Overall, councillors, we believe the development to be satisfactory and we recommend support of the project.
Thank you for that, Peter. Now, I understand we have several speakers for this item, 2 objectors. Is that right, Darren?
Yes, Mr Mayor, Gary and Claudia.
Okay, if Gary or Claudia, they're here, one of you can take the front here. Thank you. You're Gary or Claudia? Gary. Thanks, Gary. Claudia, you're here too, yes? Did you want to speak as well or not? Because you've got 2.5 minutes each. Okay, so you've got 2.5 minutes each. Okay, total of 5 combined.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I actually live next door to this proposed development, so I think I'm probably the best qualified in this room to talk about it. There's a few concerns, quite a few. It's in a part of the street where there's already a glut of unit developments. Of the 12 blocks that run down from my house on my side of the street, 9 of those blocks are already developed. So I think that sort of speaks for itself in regards to problems with traffic congestion. A lot of the cars are often illegally parked up near the corner. There has been a couple of cases of cars being sideswiped. Now, out the front of this development and across the road, there are 2 bus stops. There's inadequate car parking with these developments. So that's obviously a big problem. On a personal level, living next door, both these houses are beautiful old Victorian style homes. Very consistent with the area, lovely street. Now, over time, the street's really become like a construction zone. A lot of these old homes have been knocked down, a lot of these units have gone up. You know, it's just been, the past 2 or 3 years, just a permanent construction zone. And it has changed the landscape of the street, the demographic of the street. As someone living next door, I'm actually, horrified by this. I'm going to have 5 2-storey units that will run along the side of my fence. And, it's easy for people to say that this conforms with everything.
15 seconds.
But until you actually are in a position where you're living next door, then I think, you really don't know. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Resume your seat. Thank you very much. Claudia, if you'd like to join us, please, and present your case. Thank you. You've also got 2.5 minutes.
My house, at the back of my house is where this development is. So basically, it's affecting my privacy. I mean, having a wall of 2-storey buildings behind you where you can't even see the north sun, especially in winter. And basically, what I'm really worried about, because we're having enough congestion with B-doubles driving up and down Edward Street, cars coming out of Pine Street because there's a hospital and whatever, and now Kelsby Street being so busy that the traffic congestion is a joke. And basically, it's going to affect our area. I mean, you know, they're asking for a waiver of parking or whatever because of the development they're making. So it's causing more cars to go onto or park on Kelsby Street. And yeah, and how close the actual buildings are, so close to the fence line. So, you know, it's a 2-storey building where you can't have no privacy. So if anybody's in their backyard, you know, they basically, you know, haven't got no privacy at all. So, and the effect of the such a big development is affecting the stormwater in the area, when we're already having enough trouble with having water troubles in our backyards with, you know, the ground being so soft and whatever. And yeah, basically it's just changing the area, you know, from an area where, you know, there's one house on a block of land, now it's 4 or 5 properties on one block of land, causing the whole area to change. So, yeah, so it's caused us to feel like we're isolated, that, you know, basically we're, you know, surrounded by just prison walls. So, yeah. And like I said, just the amount of traffic what's in Reservoir now is just unbelievable. And it's like Russian roulette to even the drive out of my driveway when you've got so many cars coming out of Kelsby Street, Pine Street, and all the side streets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, boys. You can resume your seat in the gallery. We now go to questions from councillors to our officers. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our officers, if I may. The second objector asked, mentioned one of his concerns was the overshadowing and not having access to natural to sunlight. Where does this sit exactly in terms of the and also for the benefit of the council in the gallery, the requirements and in terms of what are the exact requirements for someone's in terms of their natural sunlight, if that makes sense.
Councillors, the officer assessing the application has looked at shadow cast by the proposed development onto the neighbouring property to the south, obviously. It complies with Clause 55 standard, and as we all know, in a suburban setting, there will always be some shadow cast, whether it will be an existing fence or a proposed development. So there's an anticipation that there will be some shadow cast, but our assessment is, does it comply with the standard? And we have found that it does comply with the standard. And therefore we give that standard a tick.
Any other questions? Councillor Greco.
Yeah, I just have 2 related questions. One is that that this proposal is not compliant on 2 grounds. That is the in relation to the car parking and also the setback, just to get that clear, because I think I heard that it was not compliant on 1 ground, but it's actually not compliant on 2 grounds. So in relation to the car parking, it was mentioned by the objectors that that there's a bus stop there in front of the development. Could we just get some more information in relation to that? Because I think it's relevant in terms of, because this application is seeking the waiving of 1 car parking spot, the visitor car parking spot, and so therefore there'll be implications if there is a bus stop there in front of the development.
Councillor, I don't know whether there is a bus stop directly in front of the site. I was out there today. It's in Edward Street. It's in Edward Street. So I don't recall seeing one directly in front of the site.
Okay. Just in relation to the overlooking and in regards to the internal views, can you just spell out what the actual, because I understand that that's not compliant, but there are conditions that have been placed, how those conditions will actually alleviate, if it does alleviate, the problems with overlooking and with internal views.
So councillors, when referring to the majority of the elevations, one will see that most of the windows are high sill windows. The windows where we are concerned that there will be some overlooking have been addressed by condition 1S of the recommendation. So they relate to, I'll read those out, the south facing upper floor window in the north eastern bedroom of Unit 5 and the north facing first floor north eastern bedroom window of Unit 6. And there's a list of measures that the applicant could look into, either raising the seal or skewer glazing or further external treatment of those windows. So if that is done, we then have complete compliance. If council chooses to support the project, this would have to be done. And therefore we have compliance again with that particular standard.
And just one final question, if I may, Mr. through the Chair, is that on page 38 where it talks about the walls and boundaries, I just want to get a bit more clarity about what that statement in the report actually means, because it talks about that the length to be no more than 10 metres, and that in the table that has been provided, it talks about 12 metres. So can we just get some understanding in relation to how that complies or how that works?
Councillors, again, it refers to context. When we look at the elevation, the floor plan, you'll notice that the two garages located between Unit 7 and 8 abut an outbuilding. So there may not be compliance there in terms of overall height, but because we have context, it negates that issue. We then have clear setback, except for the garage associated with Unit 6. Therefore, when you look at the overall length of that boundary and the percentage of wall to boundary, it satisfies the requirements of the standard. So that's...
So it's, just to clarify, so it's not compliant with the standard, but you're saying that it satisfied the overall objective. Is that so?
Now, when you refer to the table, it says the maximum length allowable is 21 metres. This is for the northern boundary. The proposed length is 6 metres. And for the southern boundary, maximum length allowable is 21 metres. The proposed length is 12 metres, and it is in two sections. So it does satisfy the requirement.
Okay, just to get that clear. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify the plan 501, the turning circles. From what I read, there is compliance in terms of turning circles and compliance of landscaping, but when you look at the plan, it seems that in order to achieve the full turning circle, the landscaping would be compromised.
That's
so
true.
can we get some clarification as to why that's you know, when one is compromised and the other is still yet being assessed as compliant?
Council, to achieve, you're correct, to achieve the turning circle to allow access into the car space, the open space that sits forward of Unit 4 near the entry will need to be sacrificed to allow that to happen. From a planner's point of view, given that open space is located somewhat far into the site, therefore it's not impacting on the open space presentation of the street, we consider sacrificing the open space to ensure that the car parking really works is the preferred option. But yes, that section of landscaping will need to be sacrificed.
So just to clarify, follow-up question. So in other words, there will be no landscape in that area in order for that to occur.
Not in front of Unit 4.
And Unit 8 as well?
I think we've imposed a condition that deals with that one. Let me just check.
Yeah.
The landscape, it's condition 1D, the landscape strip to the front, that is the south of Unit 4, is to be deleted. I believe that's the only one that's required to be deleted.
Right, but nothing about Unit 8.
Sorry?
Nothing about Unit 8.
I don't think we're going to get into that.
Right, okay.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we have a recommendation there. Anyone want to move the recommendation? Or an alternative? Councillors?
If no one else moves the alternate recommendation, I'll have a go at alternate recommendation, as this wasn't flagged previously. I'd like to offer an alternate motion.
I'm happy to second it.
Let's hear it first.
Yep.
Offer an alternate motion of refusal in that it does not comply with the clause 55 of the Darebin Planning Scheme in relation to street setback, parking provisions, and also lack of landscaping opportunities due to the density of the development.
That's it?
That's it for now. And yeah,
I think we need to think of a
unless
few more
others
than that.
got other.
So, through your perspective, can we hear those three?
So the three grounds for refusal
Three grounds,
are
okay.
lack of. Just refer to my earlier notes. So it does not comply with clause 55 of the Darebin Planning Scheme in relation to street setback. It does not comply. It lacks adequate provisions for visitor parking, and also lack of landscaping opportunities provided on site.
I'm happy to second
Seconded. Okay, Councillor Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do find this somewhat of an interesting proposal. As I said, there does seem to be an overreach on this particular application. The other issue which was, in addition to the lack of street front setback and also the inadequate visitor car parking, is really the landscaping, as noted by our officers and through my questioning. I'm also worried about the lack of landscaping opportunity in front of Unit 8. If you look at the Plan 501, the turning circle literally comes within the whisker of the wall of the unit on unit number 8. I also question the lack of conditions around the proposed two studies on Units 6 and 7. They are, particularly Unit 7, have a fairly sizable study, and it's usual practice for us to issue some sort of guidance note in relation to the study. However, as this is a refusal, I'll not make this an additional requirement.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Greco, anything to add?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Look, I was right from the outset, I was concerned about this particular application, and I'm glad that Councillor Lee has moved in an alternate motion not to accept this application. Again, I don't think it meets the tests in terms of we have particular standards that applicants need to meet, and obviously two of these standards have not been met, and there are concerns about the overall project. I also note that in relation to other requirements, is that it complies with conditions, and Mr. Mayor, I'm not that satisfied that the conditions that have been put in place will actually make it a satisfactory application. When too many conditions, when there are too many conditions to a particular application, I feel that it's actually stretching the envelope, and as a result of that, I don't think it makes it really a viable application. The other in particular concern that I had, and I think is an issue that was raised by the objector, is in regards to the extra car parking spot that is going to be waived because it doesn't meet the standard required. And as a result of that, at least one car will have to be out on the street. And we've heard about the traffic issues on the street, and also tonight I just learned that, and I'm not sure because I've heard two conflicting views about where this actual bus stop is. And so residents are saying that the bus stop is very close, in close proximity to the development, and that will have an enormous impact in relation to availability of street car parking, and with the waiver it will actually compound the situation. So on those grounds, I think this is clearly not a supportable application, and I urge councillors to vote for the alternate motion to reject this particular application.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers?
Should I reread the...
Let's hear it again, Councillor.
Yep. So the application is refused on the following grounds. 1, does not meet clause 55 of the Darabin Planning Scheme in relation to street setback. 2, lack of visitor car parking provided on site. Number 3, lack of landscaping opportunities provided on site. And 4, this is an overdevelopment of the site.
So fourth point.
Yeah, fourth point added as a normal procedure. Yeah.
And accepted by Councillor Greco too. Councillor McCarthy, did you want to speak?
Just having heard the motion again, just I suppose a process question. If there are other causes of concern that officers might identify on technical grounds,
no.
We can't hear those right now, if I'm correct. No. So we need to go with the motion as read.
Correct.
As it is. Thanks.
If there's no further speaker, no more debate, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Members of the gallery, council decide to refuse that application. All parties were notified of council's decision. The applicant will be notified that council refused the application and be given 60 days of appeal rights should they choose to go to VCAT. All parties will be notified and objectors will be also told that council will then go to VCAT, should it go to VCAT, to defend those grounds of refusal. Thank you. If you've come to that item, you may leave or stay for the rest of the agenda. Next item we're considering is 5.3, application for 50 to 52 Wales Street in Thornbury. Over the officers.
Mr Mayor, this application seeks approval to construct 5 double-storey residential dwellings. 3 of the dwellings are 3 bedrooms and there are 2 which are 2 bedrooms. There are a total of 5 car parking spaces proposed on site. The application therefore seeks a waiver of a single visitor parking space. Open space for each of the dwellings is provided in 2 ways. There are 3 of the dwellings which have reverse living with open space accessible through living through a first floor balcony. And you notice there is some commentary in the officer's report on the weight of any concerns to be given the reverse living. The balance of the dwelling proposes open space in a conventional form on the ground floor. The land has an area of 748 square metres. It's actually included in 2 zones. There was previously a commercial use in the property which is to be retained. And that explains also, Mr Mayor, why there is some non-compliance with street setback that was raised in the previous item. In this case, it relates to a building which is proposed to be retained within the design, and that lends itself variation in setbacks for the new development. So there's a combination of new and old with this development. With the application being advertised, there have been a total of 21 objections received. These are detailed and responded to on pages 54 through to 56 of the officer's report. So really, Mr Mayor, in summary, the application does retain a building on the corner, and that's the reason why there is some non-compliance, and the other element of non-compliance is fairly well explained in the report in terms of daylight access to ground floor open space. And I think the officer's report is self-explanatory on why that is supported and considered in the context of the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren. Okay, we now have one speaker for this item, the representative of the applicant.
Mr Mayor. Yeah, so the applicant, Daniel Fazio.
Daniel, are you here? Daniel, if you could take the front here, sir, and you've got 5 minutes to present your case in this matter.
Thank you. Good evening. Just to recap a little bit about the development. So, commercial zone is one of the lots and general residential on the other lot, and they are abutting. Currently, the commercial property really hasn't been used as commercial property for a long, long time, so this essentially turns 2 dwellings into 5 dwellings on a 2-lot site. We've got 2 2-bedrooms and 3 3-bedroom dwellings. So, as mentioned, there's a combination of conventional living, ground floor open space, and reverse living. And it's noted the reverse living gives the opportunity for full north access to those open spaces, which is a bit harder to achieve if they were on ground floor. quite close to a reserve within a couple hundred metres, and to All Nations Park, which is only a few hundred metres away, therefore providing for the recreational or extra recreational needs for those occupants. There's a significant example of reverse living in the area in Clarendon Street, again only a couple hundred metres away, showing that the area can support such a configuration of living. It's noted that this style of townhouse development is well within what the Darebin housing strategy is after, an increase of such, I guess, semi-detached or townhouse style, which is noted as being a 95% increase needed over the next few years as part of housing in Darebin. I'll just touch on the parking, which is noted that there is a waiver requested. It's been explored by council and deemed to be appropriate given what's in the area available on the street and bus availability on Wales. Now, the proposal doesn't change any of the parking out the front. It is near an intersection, and I believe there's one space available at front which doesn't get changed by the proposal at all. Now, finally, there's the issue of conditions. As you can see, due to the strong compliance with Res Code, none of the conditions actually require any building alterations. It's noted that condition G needs to be updated as by the planner. That actually only applies to dwelling 1 only. So that's an easy small condition. And with the objections, 21 have been noted as recorded. Now, it sounds like a large number. 2 of those were in Thornbury. The rest were outside of Thornbury, as is common in Darebin at the moment. So of those 2 in Thornbury, the closest one was over 200 metres away. So I think, although there's a large number, I think quantity-wise there is, but quality-wise there's not known as being a significant number of objections. Again, talking about parking, and we've discussed that already. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can resume your seat, we now go to questions from councillors. Any questions from councillors to our officers? Councillor McCarthy.
No questions. I actually was going to propose an alternative because I actually think there are a number of grounds of
non-compliance. If there's no questions, we'll hear this alternative. Yep, I gather there's no questions. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Chair. The alternative has 7 points, so I ask councillors to bear with me. The motion is that council refuse the application on the following grounds. 1, the proposal represents an overdevelopment of the site. 2, the proposal does not provide sufficient car parking in accordance with Clause 52.06 of the Darebin Planning Scheme. 3, the proposal does not achieve the objectives of Clause 22.02 of the Darebin Planning Scheme Neighbourhood Character. 4, the proposal does not achieve the preferred neighbourhood character identified for Precinct C2 in the Darebin Neighbourhood Character Study in terms of its massing, siting, provision for vegetation and building form. 5, the proposed residential uses do not achieve the purpose of the Commercial Zone 1 as outlined in Clause 34.01. 6, the proposal does not comply with the standard contained in Clause 55.03-1 of the Darebin Planning Scheme, Standard B6 street setbacks. And 7, the proposal does not comply with the standard contained in Clause 55.05-6 of the Darebin Planning Scheme, Standard B29, solar access to open space.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. This was circulated early today to all councillors, so they should have copies of that. You're the mover. Do we have a seconder? Second, Councillor Lee. Councillor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Look, I think it's pretty straightforward. There are a number of grounds of non-compliance. Whilst there are some elements of the application that have merit, there are others which I think fail to address elements of our own planning scheme, and I think we need to be cognisant of so many points of non-compliance in that regard. I am sceptical of some applications which seem to take us down a path that is highly inconsistent with both the planning scheme but also our preferred zoning and use of certain sites. I won't go into all the specifics of the motion as councillors have heard it, but there are some technical deficiencies in there as well, so I would ask councillors to consider that. I'd welcome to see something more compliant proposed, but that's not what we have in front of us, so we have to deal with that.
Just seeking some clarity in relation to 55.05-5.
Yeah, just through Mr Mayor, so point 7 of the alternate, just to, I guess after some clarification, whether it was 5505-5 or -6?
-6.
6, which is the storage.
It's got -6-5.
Standard B29 solar access to open space.
Which is
sorry, might have
-5.
been -5. Sorry,
That might be a misprint.
my apologies. That's
we'll
misprint.
just
Thank you.
note that, okay. Councillor Lee, a second. Do you wish to add anything?
Just very briefly, as Councillor McCarthy said, this is a corner site and it is in commercial zoning, so it is ready for development. However, that development must be consistent with the neighbourhood character and does not, contrasting far too much. And what I have seen in this is that it does not have a consistency. I agree there's got to be some deviation from the neighbourhood character, but there's also a degree of respectability to the existing neighbourhood character. When you do look at the massing and the siting of it and the building form of it, it certainly does not. It deviates too much from the existing neighbourhood character, and as such, I think it deserves a second round of consideration or reconsideration.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. If there's no further speakers or debate, we're now voting for an alternative recommendation to refuse that. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Members of the gallery, council decide to refuse that application. All parties will be notified of council decision. The objectors will be notified, and the applicant, should they choose to go to VCAT, will have 60 days to appeal council's decision. If it does go to VCAT, council will therefore go to VCAT supporting a refusal for this application. Okay.
You can have that noted as unanimous, please.
I will have that noted by the member as unanimous decision. Thank you. Next item we're considering is 5.4, 375 St George's Road, Thornbury. Over to the officers for that one.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I wish to offer an unreserved apology for a mistake that was made in the lead up to this application coming before the committee. There was an error where a notice of decision was wrongly issued on delegation, and the matter was clearly needed to be decided in this forum. Letters did go out explaining that to the applicant and to the objectors with, as you'd expect, an unreserved apology. With that, Mr Mayor, the application seeks approval to construct a 3-storey development. It is a mixed-use proposal. It maintains a ground floor shop use. There are 4 dwellings proposed above the shop. There will be 2 bedrooms in each of the 4 dwellings. A total of 5 car parking spaces are proposed through a car stacker configuration. The subject land is a single shop front width with an area of 254 square metres. So it's quite a small parcel, has a frontage of just over 7 metres. The application has been advertised. There have been a total of 7 objections received. These are detailed and responded to on pages 74 through to 79 of the officer's report. The subject land is affected by Amendment C136 and is located in an area where council has adopted a mandatory maximum height of 4 stories. Mr Mayor, the report does explain that to enjoy that 4-storey height, there's an encouraged frontage of 15 metres. The site's below that, and that explains why you're looking at an acceptable lower height in that instance. So the application before you is required to be assessed both under Amendment C136 and existing controls on the planning scheme. It's important to highlight that a number of conditions proposed will satisfy some of the objections raised. In particular, there is concern regarding the manoeuvrability of the car stackers. To draw the committee's attention to condition 1F, which is intended to address an error in the plans where the right-of-way is shown at 3.5 metres when in fact it's only 3 metres, and that gives the impression that to access the car stackers you need to access through someone else's property. Clearly that's not the case, and clearly that's not supportable. So there are some concerns about car stackers, but as specified in the report, this is actually a legitimate provision for parking that is routinely accepted by VCAT. So whilst there are those concerns, it is identified just as a surface ground park, just as a basement car park, as an acceptable provision of parking. The application before you, assessed both under C136 and the planning scheme, is recommended for support.
Thank you, Darren. Okay, we now go to our presenters. We've got two objectives who've asked to speak and the applicant's representative. So we'll go with the objectives first.
Point of order is it not custom and practice that the applicant,
I beg your pardon.
normally goes first?
Jump. Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Is Mr Matt Ryan on behalf of the applicant?
Yes. Matt, are you here? Yes, thank you, Matt. If you can join us at the front, you've got 5 minutes. Got the order wrong then, sorry about that. Over to you, mate. You've got 5 minutes. Please keep you on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors, for this opportunity. Look, this is actually a great opportunity for the council to support its own policy, which has just gone through the panel and which the council has just adopted. And I went along to the panel hearing for the original new zones, and like most councils, Darabin has taken the opportunity to tighten things up in just about all the residential zones. The ray of hope in all of that is that you have places where you can still get affordable housing, but it's not in those residential zones because of the policies of protecting the residential areas. It's in these places, and this place is on St George's Road, where the tram running past. There's a beautiful bike track that I've ridden up several times, and it's a great opportunity to upgrade what is a really run-down little shopping centre with a good mixed-use development and providing housing which is actually affordable. Now, one of my sons bought his first house in Reservoir. It was a little 3-unit development site, and he was able to get into the housing market because there were 3 units on that site. Now, in a lot of places now you can only build 2. The price has gone up. It's no longer affordable accommodation. You're protecting the residential areas in most parts of the municipality. That's 95% of the municipality. You've got those tiny little areas where you can get some affordable accommodation where young people can get into the housing market, and this is part of our place. People will be able to buy one of those small apartments, 2-bedroom apartments, a lot cheaper than a house and land in the area or than a townhouse in the area, which there'll be less than there have been in the past. And the policy supports it, the Minister supports it. While we're waiting for the Minister to sign it off, the panel supports it, you support it. There's been objections about the fact that the stackers are going to make some noise. Well, there's a condition dealing with that on the permit. That the laneway wasn't correctly assessed by our traffic engineers. They've gone back and had a look at it. We're required to put in U-turn circles which will demonstrate the turn can still easily work. These stackers are set back 6.7 metres from the laneway. The laneway looks like it's 3.5 metres wide. It's got a half metre of grass on one side, but the title shows it's only 3 metres wide. But it's still a 3-metre laneway, and I've had 30 years experience in planning, but there's no problem getting into these stackers at the rear of the site. There's no problem with car parking for, there's currently a pizza shop there. The new, much smaller commercial development, which will activate the street frontage to St George's Road, will generate less parking. I think it's much better with residents coming into the rear laneway, instead of it just being left with nothing happening at night. Or head sort of a place, for example, as it can occur, you'll have residents coming in, they'll be looking after it and making sure that sort of thing doesn't happen. As for the objectors, I think the strongest and more vocal objectors are ones that are closer to site. If you live on a laneway backing onto a shopping centre, you cannot expect the same amenity that you will get if you live in the residential area. If you live in a place where you're not near the shops, you're not going to a laneway, you can expect a higher amenity. That's a well-established planning principle. If you live in this sort of a location, you get the benefit of living that close to the shops, you get the benefit of living in that location, and you get a slightly different amenity. This development doesn't have to reach the same amenity standards, yet it does. There's no overlooking, it steps away from the residents, it's well set back, it's well designed, and it's going to improve the laneway and improve St George's Road. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Much appreciate you can resume your seat in the gallery.
Thank you.
We now have two objectors who have requested to speak, 2.5 minutes each. We've got Robin and Lisa, is that right? Yes, Robin?
I'm in fact speaking on behalf of all of us.
Oh, sure, well, it's fine. You've got 5 minutes then, if you want to make your way to the front here. Thank you. And keep your eye on the screen. You've got 5 minutes, thanks.
Can I just say before my 5 minutes is in that I was advised by the planning department that I would get to speak before the applicant. Just to clarify, this is yet another bit of the process we've not...
Well, I think it's the applicant who always speaks first.
Well, the planning department has just...
Yeah, well, we'll follow that up. Thank you. We've got 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We live at 2/75 Normanby Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of all the objectors in the row behind me. We acknowledge the planning context for this site. We also acknowledge the proposed C136 amendment, and we acknowledge that some of the conditions on the application will address some of our concerns. However, we also think that some of those conditions will be impossible to enforce in practice. We think that the Planning Department has placed too much importance on the C136 amendment, and we wish to highlight that this corner of the Normanby Avenue and St George's Road intersection has two characteristics which mean it requires special consideration. First, I disagree with the applicant. It actually will remain a predominantly residential site. The C1 zone only affects 2 properties on that strip, not the whole strip as for the other 3 corners. Transition to the neighbouring residential zones is important, and the implications of such a dense development on such a small site have not been adequately considered. Noise and pollution impacts have not been adequately addressed, particularly on the property at 75 Normanby Avenue, which has a young child's bedroom located on its boundary directly opposite the rear entrance to the proposed development. The second particularity of the right-of-way on this corner is that it isn't just a road. Again, I disagree with the applicant. It's actually the pedestrian entrance to 2/75 Normanby Avenue. Indeed, it's the only entrance to our property, both pedestrian, vehicular and emergency. When Council approved the subdivision of 75 Normanby all those years ago, it effectively turned this part of the right-of-way into a footpath. And it's Council's responsibility to ensure that my family and I have safe, continuous access to our property. From the report, it's clear this has not been considered in the recommendation to approve the car stacker, which will significantly increase traffic flow in this part of the laneway, and it is our pedestrian access. Our land along the right-of-way carries our essential services, our water, electricity, telecommunications and street lighting. As we've discussed, the application completely ignored our existence and calculated their turning circles and setbacks. They think it's grass, it's actually landscaping. I spend a great deal of time trying to keep going. I would also like to say that the owners of number 75, Alyssa and Lindsay, share our concern regarding the damage to fencing. We're also very concerned that cars turning will affect our lighting, which is the only way we can access our house at night. They also have concerns that their 2 young children will be significantly affected by noise and pollution from the car stacker and from rubbish collection. And just to the rubbish collection, it's not indicated how that will be collected from the pizza shop, and we would request that the permit condition stipulates collection from St George's Road and not from the right-of-way. To the car stacker, the garage door, which we presume is on the property boundary and therefore only 4 metres from the child's bedroom window at number 75, will be raised and lowered much more frequently than for a smaller development. There's the noise of the stacker mechanism itself. We note the condition that the door must be closed before the stacker can operate, but that would seem unenforceable in practice. Further, how would the Council ensure that the required independent acoustic report covered actual rather than proposed use of the stacker, particularly at night? How would pollution from idling cars as they wait for the stacker to reconfigure be monitored and controlled, given that we have people, residents nearby? The location of the stacker so close to the right-of-way entrance is also of particular concern to us, and that's why we have so many objections. We note that Vic Roads has viewed the proposal and expressed no issues. However, they will have commented on the proposed conditions of use, and we use the right-of-way daily, and we know that no matter what conditions governing driver behaviour are put into a planning permit, drivers will behave as they wish. They always do. They stand across clearways. In practice, if a driver stops in the right-of-way instead of on the property, then they'll block that right-of-way for up to 2 minutes while the stacker reconfigures. And in that case, they would be blocking the right-of-way less than 8 metres from where it meets Normanby Avenue, which is in turn only 27 metres where that meets St George's Road. Any user of this right-of-way will tell you that it's imperative to get off Normanby Avenue as quickly as possible. In peak hour, it carries between 450 and 480 vehicles per hour, including buses and trucks. There's also the right-hand turn into the KFC opposite. As I noted in my email to you last week, there's no clarity coming from Council or from VCAT regarding the impacts of car stackers on traffic flow, noise and pollution.
20 seconds.
You must be satisfied that the applicant can practically provide parking on the site, and we submit that you cannot. We also note there is another proposal before VCAT, and VCAT has not yet decided on that, and in fact the VCAT member wants to view a stacker in action. If that's VCAT's approach, we believe that should be Council's approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can resume your seat, we now go to questions from councillors to our officers. Any questions? Councillor McCarthy.
I'll just foreshadow an alternative, but before I propose that, I just wanted to ask, through our officers, the analysis of the two properties to the immediate west, 1/75 and 2/75. The objector made reference to the way that the turning circle is being considered. I just wanted to get a bit more information, if we've got a bit more of an analysis about how that has been considered in our report that we've got in front of us.
Yeah, there's several sections that cover it, Mr Mayor. Condition 1F is a condition requiring compliance with the Australian standard, and that's to require and prove that the 3.10 can occur on the off the laneway into the car stackers. There's some explanation of that within the report, and it's also included some commentary on the response to the objection on page 79. So that's to ensure that access to parking occurs with no more than a free-form turn into the subject land, and which is what the standard allows for.
Based on that answer, Mr Chair, I'm happy to move an alternative motion, but unless there's any questions before I go there.
Let's hear it, Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. Would you like to hear it first?
Let's hear it.
The motion is that Council issue a notice of refusal with grounds as follows. 1. The height and setbacks of the proposal from the west boundary will be detrimental to the character and amenity of the area and are contrary to proposed amendment C137, Design and Development Overlay Building Envelopes. 2. The proposal results in overlooking to the west adjacent habitable room window. 3. The proposed car stackers are an inappropriate form of parking. And that's it.
Second, Councillor McCarthy, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this is an interesting one, and whilst I found the presentations from both the applicant and the objector quite informative and quite interesting to hear opposing views in relation to how one might look at a development at this site, I think we need to be really wary of any development that is seeking to use car stackers to deal with what is essentially a configuration problem when it comes to yield. Here we have a very constrained site. It's a small site. It's in a very difficult location. I know it well. I live not far from there, and I would say that and I commute past there on a daily basis, and I would say that the thing that corner presents is a whole lot of challenges when it comes to medium density development for the reasons outlined by the objector. The applicant made some interesting points about C136. However, this actually doesn't completely meet the aspirations of C136 when it comes to the envelope issues as outlined in my points. I'm not willing to support this application at this stage because I think that it has some serious flaws, and those flaws are to do with access and egress from the site, as has been made clear. I think the other problem that we have with this site as well is that the interface with the west boundary, whilst there is some debate about how close it is and how close it isn't, this is a small site, it is not deep, it does not provide the gradation that we would seek to achieve on some of those bigger sites in St George's Road, and on that basis I think that the application is trying to do too much on this block and is a bit overcooked on that regard, so I'll end it there.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Walsh, anything to add?
Yeah, look, I too found both presentations informative, and look, the applicant made some valid points, and indeed the proposal does certainly has some valid points. I do think, however, that it's not, it's probably not quite there yet, and around this area, congestion is obviously an issue, and the impacts of car stackers as well, and there are concerning, but I'll leave it there.
Okay, there's no other speaker or debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Members of the Gallery, Council decided to refuse that application. All parties be notified. The applicant will be notified of Council's decision of a refusal. Should they choose to go to VCAT, they'll have 60 days of appeal right to do so. And if they do go there, Council will therefore go with the case to argue our refusal based on the grounds provided by Councillor McCarthy and seconded by Councillor Walsh. Thank you. Next item we're considering is item 6.1, general planning information. Any questions there from councillors?
Happy to move.
Happy to move, Councillor Lee, seconded Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? That's carried. Any urgent business, Mr. Hamilton?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No urgent business. That concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you, members of the gallery. Thank you, councillors. Bid you good night. Officers, 8:05.